Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 405, recorded live on Friday, November 6th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, we had a opportunity to, again, ask the devs, a very special opportunity. We'll get to that in a moment. This week's screenshot, Dayworm jumps into the Night Revels in the 245th screenshot of the week. A nice theme there with the Night Revels still going on. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, or from our website at DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next Saturday, November 14th. You can stay updated by following us on social media pages at DDOcast on Twitter or our website at DDOcast.com with our calendar. On the podcast this week, we have a little bit of game news, but the big thing we get to do this week is ask some more devs some questions, and without further ado, here they are. Welcome, DDOcast listeners. This is your host, Shamgar. I am here with the devs for another round of Ask the Devs. And we got a lot of questions, so we're going to get right into this. Maybe if you guys can go around the table and just introduce yourselves, say hi.
Hi, I'm Vargouille. I do a lot of systems, race, class work. You've probably seen me on the forums at some point.
I'm Knockback. I make dungeons.
Cordovan, community manager.
Steelstar, I do a little of everything.
Great, and thanks. Just to start off, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate when you guys take some time out of your day to do this. Hopefully, you have fun doing it. Get a little break from all the computer work and stuff.
Yeah, it's nice. Yep.
Good Friday.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of questions. Some of them are going to be a little bit more kind of focused, but we're going to start off with some stuff that's coming in the future, and maybe try and pull a little spoilers out of you guys. I want to start with gnomes. We know that gnomes are coming. What place should players expect gnomes to have in DDO?
Near the ground.
Yeah, kind of low, you know. Maybe around halflings, maybe a little, I don't know. Yeah.
So a lot of that hasn't really been decided yet. We've moved, a lot of the art has been in production, but a lot of the actual, like if you want the stats and all the abilities that gnomes are going to have, we don't know yet.
They are, at least in pen and paper, they've often favored wisdom, something like that. So you might see something along those lines,
Wisdom and intelligence are typically the two that they kind of gravitate towards. I know I've seen a few people posting pictures of gnome artificers.
Yes.
Yes, they tend to tinker and do some illusion stuff sometimes.
In the Eberron side, they're often associated with House Zilargo, right? Which, right, or the land of Zilargo, the country of Zilargo.
Country,
right?
yeah,
There we go.
Country
Country of
of
Zilargo. There you go.
House.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
that's the name of the gnome house. I don't remember.
Is it Durrani?
Airship.
Yeah.
Yes.
House airship.
House airship. So I want to talk a little bit about, we've got Epic Shroud, Hound of Zoriat, and Tempest Spine coming. I want to talk about a little bit, why were these ones chosen for epification, and what players might be able to expect with these raids?
Oh, we're going to look at me.
We're gonna look at
We don't
Steelstar.
have to
Should I just flat out say it? Hound of Zoriat started on me and Cookie Kobold going back and forth saying, I bet we could make Hound of Zoriat epic in under a week. And then I more or less made an epic Hound of Zoriat in about a week. It's a relatively small raid in terms of the components, but in terms of being challenging and providing sort of a large kind of experience where you need a number of different people doing a number of different things, it can be really challenging just in the mechanics. So when we were looking for new raids to bring toward the legendary end of things, the high-end epic, Hound of Zoriat, I think, updated for more advanced character levels is going to be really challenging. So
It was also, Hound of Zoriat has a place in a lot of players' hearts. It was for quite a few years, it was actually quite a popular raid, both it and Vision of Destruction. But as, we've gone into epic levels and beyond, it's sort of lost its stature a little bit in the raiding community. It made sense to, when we're looking at I guess you could say epifying, although in this case it's basically legend-defying the raids. To look at some of the ones that were most popular over the years, and Hound of Zoriat fits that bill quite nicely.
Right. So for Hound of Zoriat, the real impetus was Steelstar's Dare.
Yeah.
But in the case of Tempest, Spine, and Shroud, the real answer is it's because they're the most popular raids in the game, and we want to have legendary raids that people want to run.
When we're looking at the sort of level 30 raids, what should be that big raid to get for the level 30 bump? The Shroud just frankly was an obvious choice, particularly because we also had desires to have sort of a I don't really want to use the word end game loot system isn't really the correct phrase, but a high tier loot system to match with that level 30 bump. And so going to the popular green steel system also made sense to bring that into the higher level. So if you're going to have epic green steel, then you better have epic Shroud, right? So there you go. On the Tempest Spine side too, part of it was our desire to have a free raid. Tempest Spine has always been a raid where you didn't need to flag. It's sort of the popcorn raid where people can just sort of hang out, have fun, make their characters naked, run through different things. And so we wanted to epify that one as well and just, keep it to be sort of a fun raid that just anybody could run. And it made sense when we were looking at things to bring to the level 30 cap to do that one as well.
Yeah, just the overall style of it is both very different from the Hound of Zoriat as well as very different from the Shroud. So you kind of have three different, very distinct raids coming into this level 30 plus space.
Go ahead. After you.
The Shroud, Epic Hound of Zoriat, Epic Tempest Spine Legendary Hound of Zoriat, Legendary Tempest Spine will be pretty much just harder versions of the originals. Legendary Shroud, though, will be somewhat different. As everyone has surely noticed, we're doing another storyline involving Harry. The Legendary Shroud will conclude that storyline, but it won't play out exactly the way that the original Shroud did. A lot of it will be familiar, but some of it will be different.
So when you guys were getting ready to dive into epic green steel crafting, did you put straws around and whoever got the short straw?
There were some discussions as to who was going to do it. It turns out I'm probably the most familiar with the system. I put in green steel deconstruction in Heroic several years ago, and I didn't want to make Steelstar do it.
Thanks.
It's an ambitious task. It's one of the most popular, if not the most popular, raid and crafting system in the game, I think, for at least for a number of years. So
it is very large, very ambitious, and even though I'm working on it right now, it's still a little scary.
Yeah, I get that. So you've been dropping this term legendary around. What is legendary? We've seen legendary dropped around. We've seen Reaper dropped around, kind of name dropped. What are they? How do they kind of fit into the strategy?
So basically there's Heroic, which is the first 20 levels, then there's Epic for 10 levels, and Legendary is basically the next phase beyond that. So that is the easiest way to understand Legendary.
Yes.
Reaper is a totally different thing. So Reaper mode is something that we've talked about, and some text may have leaked into the game that wasn't really supposed to, but basically it's something we want to get to someday, which would apply to all quests in the game. It would not be a level cap thing, and it would be the version of the game for people who really want to get hurt. And see a challenge is the nice way to put it, but we're throwing around the term Reaper for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Hey, the Reaper thing kind of started a little bit earlier, with some of the community discussions and internal discussions about a quote hardcore difficulty. What could we do beyond Elite to really challenge that top few percent who are asking for it, and that thinking evolved into sort of an idea of a Reaper mode, but it really didn't get very much beyond that until some text snuck into the game, and it sort of committed us to some extent to this idea. But in terms of systems and that, I really just want to make sure people know that this isn't something you can expect in the near future. It really shouldn't have even crept into the game back then. But it's going to be a little while before we see anything about it.
Yeah.
So.
And in terms of legendary, when we're talking about legendary content, we're referring to content where the CR on normal is 31 and higher. So there's a few dungeons already that have CRs of 31 on hard or elite, but we're talking about the content where normal is 31 or higher.
And so I know there was something that there was a thought that maybe Mortal Fear wouldn't apply to those quests. So it would be if normal was 31 and higher would be kind of, that's where we're kind of making that definition.
Yep.
Some of that is still under discussion, but it basically, yes, it would not apply to any of the current quests. It would only apply to new high-level quests starting with update 29.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Just wanted to make sure I understood that there. So if players maybe have an idea for Reaper and how they want to get their butts kicked, maybe they should go on the forums and start here's what Reaper should look like for me thread.
We've already had a lot of those discussions.
Sure
I mean, just when Reaper, some of that terminology came out on Lamania and then live, we saw a ton of threads and discussions about it. But even before that, we've long had threads and discussions about an extra level of difficulty or something of that nature. Yeah. So we have actually quite a deep pool of feedback to call through already on that issue. But certainly, hey, yeah, we always like to hear your thoughts on it.
We've been very happy to see what's been there. Yeah. More is great.
Yeah.
We have some ideas that we really like. We think when we get to it, which again is not going to be soon, we have some solid ideas that we think are not. We've seen some posts from players that Reaper's just going to be like Elite, where everyone's just going to get in and finish immediately. That's not going to happen.
Nope.
Reaper is the DM's party kill adventure.
Yep.
We expect that.
That term may have been thrown around.
Yeah.
So what might level 30 for characters look like? We're getting pretty close to that. What can players expect? Some of it's probably still in design phase, but what's kind of the thought here?
You mentioned the feats and that sort of thing, so I think they're, in a general way, we've discussed
do
that.
you want me to kind of structure that down then?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so looking at levels 29 and 30, you're going to be going up 2 levels, level up to 29, level up to 30. At 29, you're looking at 2 feats. 1 feat.
Only one.
Only one.
Epic Destiny.
Yeah. The Epic Destiny feat. So previously at levels 26 and 28, you picked up an Epic Destiny feat. At 29, you'll pick up the 3rd one. This requires 3 cap destinies. Unlike the previous levels, some of them require 3 destinies in the single sphere, but some of them require destinies from multiple spheres.
So these are new feats.
These are brand new feats, yes. You'll also have the option of previous Epic Destiny feats that you still qualify for. And just like when you went to 28, you could pick up the ones at 26 if you wanted to.
Just to cover the bases, will the new feats only be available at 29, or will they be available at 26 and 28
These ones only available at 29.
Okay.
So there's
probably no new ones for the 26 and 28 slots.
Right.
At 30, as per the normal feat progression, you'll be able to take a normal feat, as usual.
A normal epic feat, I presume.
Right. Epic feat slots. So any of the normal or epic feats you've had access to previously, you get 1 more feat. You also get access to a legendary feat. There are about 10 of these, and they are a pretty significant jump in power over what you'd see from a normal feat. In terms of how the game is currently set up, they're a little bit like an end game kind of capstone. They are themed around archetypes a little bit. Each of them, hopefully, in at least the way it's currently set up, has a little something for everyone. So we're still kind of hashing out exactly what is in those. We're doing a lot of talking with the Players' Council about that right now. But yeah, that's what 29 and 30 look like right now.
So not class-specific
just to put the
feats.
standard caveat in there as well. This is as of what we're saying today,
Right.
So it is possible that by the time Update 29 came out, there could be some changes to this.
Basically, we're leaking all kinds of things right now that
Supreme secrets,
are
yes.
subject to change.
And so the legendary feats you're talking about are not class-specific. They're kind of more in the vein of the Epic Destinies, where you can kind of
Yes.
cherry pick some different
oriented
ideas.
around builds, but they're not based on a class.
Right.
There's going to be some that match up better than others, obviously. And there's a few other things you're going to get for leveling up. We're currently planning on changing it so you get some spell power with every epic level, so that's going to be retroactive to all the levels. We've been talking about adding some fate points at level 29 and 30, so just for hitting those levels, and possibly another Twist of Fate slot.
Possibly. There's also, sort of on a related thing, the current plan has some new feats available in the lower epic levels, specifically targeted toward boosting spellcasting in epic levels. The exact details of those, again, are still in the works, but there's a plan for that right now.
One of the other
We need
things
to have a special feed. We need 11th feed for the Life Bard. There we go. Yep. Our Swim Focus Cleric needs its
Yes.
specialty feed finally.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So one of the things that was mentioned by Sev in his very nice, in passing sort of manner, was that there's going to be a bit of a loot overhaul.
Oh, yeah.
What can you tell us about that? What might we see from that?
It's a little early to get into specifics on it. The Players' Council is seeing some of the initial sort of design ideas for that right now. As of, I think, about within the past week, some of that sort of nitty-gritty detail work went out to them. We're getting their feedback on it. I'm sure it's going to go through some changes before it gets in a place where we put it out to the more general public. The person who's specifically working on that is not here, right? Because
Right.
one of you guys
He's
are
not
working
here
on that. But so I guess I'll keep it general just to say that the goal is to make the random loot that you might get in a treasure chest more desirable, and to also increase the diversity that you currently see in the game. So, right now we hear a fair amount of feedback about, why am I always getting armors? Why am I always getting necks? And then certainly we've heard over the years about the Ghostbane property and things like that. So this is really a response to that, but it's also a way to, because we needed to bring random loot up to level 30, so we already had to do some work there anyway, to really take a look at the system in a holistic way and say, okay, what should it be on a more long-term basis, scaling all the way up from level 1 all the way up to level 30? What would we like it to look like in a way that the players would find desirable, but also, of course, in a way that doesn't invalidate raid loot and things like that? So I think what you're going to find is a little bit more of a consistent scaling of effects over the course of time. At least based on what I've seen from the spreadsheets and that now, it's going to either basically stay at a similar power level or perhaps even go up a little bit. I don't think we're going to see a lot in terms of, say, things getting weaker at any levels. That's not really a design goal there.
I can jump in here.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that, and this could change, but I'm pretty sure our current plan is that your existing random loot isn't going to change.
Yeah, right.
So it's only
That too.
going to be new loot going forward. That would be
Yeah.
under this new scheme.
Yes.
Yep. And generally, in terms of, we're going to be, to the best of our ability, try to offer more diversity of property, things like that. But I think, a lot of what is already available is still going to be available. It's just in terms of the numbers, the way it drops, the way it appears, the various things that you can get,
Hide armor.
And some of the ideas that we've had, related to, say, like mythic items and that, could we bring something of that nature into a randomized loot system as well? There have been discussions along that point. And we'll have a lot more, I think, to talk about that within the next, 3 weeks or so. So
Certainly one of our goals is for players who don't even look at their random loot because they're sure it's no good, we definitely want to change that.
Yeah.
So that at least sometimes you're going to be like, whoa. And we'll see if we can get there.
It's a big challenge when you're talking about raid loot and
It's tough,
named
yeah.
loot and all the variety almost kind of comes back around and makes it tricky.
it's almost as if loot is a important thing, completely non-controversial in every respect, I'm sure. So, easy, right? You just,
Indeed.
But so we do have a person who's not here right now. That's specifically what they are working on and have been working on for some time now. That person may also end up working on some of the Caneth crafting work that takes place here in the future.
So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about balance and class balance, and maybe we just start with what's kind of the approach for balance. What's the philosophy behind some of the balance changes that we just kind of had, and what you're trying to achieve? Or is that too vague?
No, it's
We
probably
can
more of a Severlin question in general.
Right.
But
can take a crack at
Yeah,
it.
we could take a
Yeah,
crack
that-
at it.
It's part of it. Part of it is that we want to keep balance between classes close enough so that no one ever feels like they're not contributing or not really accomplishing anything. Like, I think sometimes there's a miscommunication where players may get the impression that we're nerfing somebody just because everything should be exactly equal, and that's
No.
we don't want everything to be exactly equal. That's not really a goal, but we don't want you to feel bad because someone else is just killing everything and you feel like you're basically piking along and just getting a free ride. So that's one of the major philosophies. Is you should feel like you're having fun and you're doing something and you're contributing.
And then over the years, players will find specific combinations of abilities that really make them an outlier in terms of things like survivability or DPS and that. And to the point that stuff can be difficult to create content around.
Yeah.
And when we run into things like that, we sometimes do need to scale it back.
And a lot of times when we get that kind of imbalance between classes, especially over the last 2 years, we've been bringing things up to try and match. That doesn't always work in every case, especially when you get some particular outliers that are really high. And for trying to keep the whole class, like the group of classes as a whole in balance, it makes more sense to bring it down. And that is where we ended up on for a lot of the things you saw in 28 patch 1.
Right. And related to that is monster balance. I mean, I'm sure everyone can realize that if there's one class that's way above everyone else and is just smashing all the monsters, it's going to be easier to pull them back a bit than to bring every other class up and make all the monsters in the game
Hundreds
harder
of thousands
to
of
match
monsters,
that, because there's just so many different things we'd have to touch that if we could just pull that one back, yeah, it is totally true that that's just way less work, and that's important because then we can get on to other awesome stuff in DDO, green steel, random loot, etc.
Yeah.
And then part of the most recent work that was done as well was related to the feedback we've had for quite some time now about the overall difficulty of the game. We've been hearing for really at least several years now, probably particularly since Armor Up on that in some cases we've maybe made things a little easier than some people would like to see, right?
Yeah.
And we've had enough of that feedback that we wanted to make sure that we still offered a challenge to as many as, you can never really find the one difficulty that's good for everybody, but you try to offer a good spectrum that covers as many people as we can. And so we've been wanting to, on that upper end there, try to continue to make it a good experience for those players who've been telling us, frankly, the game's been too easy for a little while. So.
I think you answered all of my sub-questions.
With an accent.
Very well done.
So
maybe
we just went in game, we looked at your character, and we just
Yeah.
made a checklist of things to get rid of. So,
so maybe can we spend a little more time talking about how player creativity and our very kind of organic, customized build system impacts those balancing efforts?
You mean in terms of, like, people come up with a great new build, and all of a sudden it becomes the only build in the game, so to speak? Which is never
Well,
true,
I think
but-
both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
That and we've got character creation is one of the things that people most enjoy about DDO.
Yeah.
You're talking about balance. How does the challenge of maintaining that creativity and customization kind of butt heads with the idea of trying to keep balance and having everyone be fun? What are some of the challenges or kind of involved?
Again, that's probably really more of a Severlin question, but I think in some general ways, the way I would answer that is that we like build diversity. We like people coming up with new builds. So the more we can do to encourage creativity among in the game, hey, that's great. Where I think it becomes sometimes an issue is when some of the most sort of build-minded players feel that there is really only one or two choices that are valid and the rest are, quote, invalid, then we sometimes need, it may be perceived, hey, we're nerfing X build, but it's not really the goal. The goal is to give you more options.
Right, the goal is to open up all those great character building options that Dungeons & Dragons is designed to provide. If we give you thousands of choices and your response is, but clearly this is the best one and it'd be stupid to use anything else, then we've done it wrong.
Right. So yeah, I think that's a really good point
Yeah.
in that some of the nerfs are designed to make it so that other people feel like they're contributing, and not just other people, but just those builds are not so far behind that they're in there too. And we have a lot of discussions about this all the time. One of the things that comes up a lot is pure class versus multi-class. That's a frequent topic of discussion here. So we are certainly aware of it. And there's just no easy answer, right? Some players just prefer always playing pure. Some players I want to come up with the craziest build I can, and what kind of undead crazy melee thing can I combine with something else because I want to be a zombie swashbuckler.
Yeah.
So
and
the zombie
and these builds, a lot of them, at least the ones that we know about, come up very, very frequently when we're discussing balance things. We're trying to make what seems like a small change here, but we look at it and down the line it completely, or would seem to more severely impact bard rogues. And, is that, how much of an impact is going to have that? And how many people are playing bard rogues, and why are they playing bard rogues? And it all kind of comes into account when we're looking into making adjustments.
Right. I mean, I think it's safe to say everyone on this team wants zombie swashbucklers to be a relatively viable build.
Of course.
I'm not saying that it's there, but it's what we want. We want every crazy build to work, but it's really hard to do that without making one build way above all the others, and that's the hard part.
And meanwhile, you guys are buffing things, and my pure barbarian grandmaster of flowers punchy build is left out in the cold.
But I guess, and Sev has said this on the forum several times in regards to this recent balance passes, it is not a one and done process. Right. To answer your question about how we deal with it, we deal with it always, constantly, forever, and will for as long as we're working on this game, because that's just the way, that's the reality of a living, breathing game like this.
Right. And that reminds me of, we try not to change things too much. We know that there's often a player response that, why are you changing my build every single update and I have to remake everything? And we really don't want to do that. And that's actually the recent nerfs and that's what they are. We can call them nerfs. There's a reason why those all came at once, is because it would have been so much worse if we took a bunch of those and strung them out throughout the year. Yeah. Basically, we wanted to group them together to be like, okay, yes, we know we're doing this. We expect you to have, some people are going to want to change their build. We tried pretty hard in this past to not be like, okay, your build's just invalid. This was, one of the reasons Holy Sword still works on ranged and that kind of thing. If you're a Silver Flame bow user, then we wanted you to be able to keep doing that. That's important to us. But we knew people would want to change, and it would be worse if Improved Critical came in one and then Holy Sword came in another one.
Right.
And, basically things that are pretty significant to a lot of builds, we wanted to do them all at once, even though in some ways that makes the balance harder. We want to reduce how often you have to change your character.
Yeah. Great. Good answers. I'm going to add, if you can try not to tap the table, it's reverberating through the so I want to kind of,
like in particular.
I want to shift focus a little bit and talk about monsters. How does monster scaling work, and what are some challenges with working with monsters? You can use the short version.
That's an easy
you want
one,
me to
right?
tackle that? Monster scaling.
It's
Oh, boy.
lovingly handcrafted.
Yes.
Is the best way of putting it.
So monsters are in a lot of ways nearly as complex as players. They have what you would expect from classic D&D statting, as well as all of the DDO specific statting you would see on a player for the most part. They have, even if it's not set to anything, things like PRR and dodge and fortification and everything like that. And in the process of making monsters, there are, sort of basic statting things that go into place when you first create it, based on the level of the monster and the type of monster you're making, and the creature itself and its base stats, which usually originate from 3.5 in one way or another. And going from there, then we adjust it from, the kind of encounter we're trying to build, and, if that's supposed to be easier or harder than the standard. And then we adjust it again after play testing. So it's sort of a long process of figuring out where the balance should be.
And that's all complicated by the fact that on different difficulty levels and different heroic versus epic, various things need to be adjusted. For example, spells. A monster that is CR6 on heroic normal is not going to have the same spells as a monster that is CR 26
Right.
on epic. No, that has to be tweaked by hand.
Right, and that including
yes, so-
casual, normal, hard, and elite. Basically, if we come up with a quest that's on heroic and epic and has all those 4 difficulties, we're really making 8 monsters for every. Like if you see a
For every
kobold in
monster.
there, there's actually 8 kobolds for every difficulty and heroic and
Yeah.
epic.
So how does that change when you go about creating a raid monster?
Oh, so raid monsters in general are tuned tougher. They start out a few levels higher. Occasionally they get a bump up in things like, going from a regular minion to a orange name or an orange name to a boss, that kind of thing, from where they normally would be. And the fine tuning is usually a little bit more err on the side of make it tougher, because it's a raid. It's supposed to be on the tougher end of things.
Yeah, it's, raids are different in that for a regular dungeon, our expectation is a normal DDO player should be able to beat it more or less the first time if they take their time. That is not our expectation.
Yeah,
Unnormal. That is not our expectation for a raid.
No. And the statting, in some ways, is a little bit easier because you're not dealing with a variable number of monsters like you would with the scaling number of monsters you'd find in quests, since raids always kick out the maximum number.
We assume you have.
Usually, yeah.
We assume you have a full party of players.
Yep.
It's going to show up for a raid. We know players have soloed some of our raids, but that's not how we design them.
Give those guys a tip of the hat and
Yeah.
go along.
Over to them.
What about the actual raid bosses?
Well, they get special wards and special abilities. They're they know when you're sleeping and they know when you're awake.
Yes.
They also tend to be singular named monsters. If you look at something like a Zuggetmoy or Lord of Blades, you're not statting. It's not a typical kobold or orc or anything like that. It's a far more specialized sort of one-off creature.
They tend to get a lot more time in terms of figuring out exactly what their statting should be, exactly what their spell list should look like. Usually specific AI scripting about what they're supposed to do when. With Zuggetmoy, who's not a raid boss but kind of a raid boss. There was a lot of time spent in her AI. Actually, I think her AI I completely did from scratch, which is kind of odd in terms of DDO monsters these days, because she had several very specific, very large attacks, and she's turreted to the center of the room. So it was kind of a very different sort of thing. So a lot more time is spent with raid bosses than you would on a normal monster, both for statting and for getting the encounter right.
And getting those special attacks down and kind of dialing that in. Do you have any hints on what we might see in the future for new monsters?
I don't think we can.
Well, certain things you can figure out.
There are some guesses. There are some guesses you could make on some recent monsters, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
So I will, give something away by saying you wouldn't be that surprised if you saw more slots.
Yeah.
Likewise, I'm pretty sure there's a certain monster that Cordovan and Tolero teased a while back that we still owe you guys that should be making an appearance next year.
Did we? Okay.
Yeah, I think we did.
All right.
And then there's
It's a mystery.
There's
They're
another
in the monster man.
monster that'll show up in the next update that you can...
The book one.
If you're
not the
familiar
game
with WotC lore and have been following the storyline, the Devil storyline we've been doing this year, you could probably figure out is going to play a role.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be coy necessarily with you. It's just that in terms of announcing new monsters to the game, you need to make sure that it's all approved from the various entities that are involved in the process.
Yeah.
And until we get that approval, we really can't talk about it.
Yeah, but sometimes you kind of need a little coyness out of these, so people start to go dig around for stuff, trying to figure out the hints. Back in the day when occasionally a dev would get on the forums and put in a puzzle in the forums, and people would go around and try to figure it out.
So we could all go around the room and say which monster is going to be in the game next year. Then we're committing to it, and then he's going to have to make it for us.
Yeah.
So
It's going to make all the
Ooh,
promises.
can I start? I want to try ask.
Sure.
still waiting for a Trask.
Oh, yeah. I want the intellect
That's
devourer.
come up once or twice.
Yeah, a big scary monster. Have some fun. Really want to party wipe the raid, you know? It's fun. Maybe for Reaper mode, every dungeon has a Trask in it.
Has a Trask. You got Sinister Storage, that like one little room in there, and it's just Trask.
The question is how many Tarrasques?
Oh yeah.
Right.
There we go.
Tarrasque assault. Yeah.
So I want to spend a little bit of time kind of more in the life of a dev. What's it like being a dev? What kind of people make successful devs? And if someone out there who's listening is interested in getting into game development, what are some things they could be pursuing or preparing themselves to get into that kind of a career?
The biggest answer almost always is make games.
Yeah.
Especially with the tools that are available today. And I don't want to endorse any particular engine or anything, but there are some really good ones available now with a lot of good online training. You can be in high school and make a pretty decent game by yourself at this point.
Yeah.
And the more you do that, the better it will look to anyone who's looking to hire you in game development. That is the number one thing is go do it. You can probably do that right now.
I'll say two things. One is, as a game designer, if you want to get involved in professional game development, learn about programming and/or art.
Yes.
Because it's way easier to get your foot in the door if you say, I can do programming or art, and also I'm a game designer, than if you just say, I'm a game designer and that's it. Or other skills. I got my foot in the door by being able to do writing. Long ago and far away. But have some other skills. Just being a designer is a tough sell. And the other thing is being a DDO designer or dev in general is a very different thing than it is in a lot of other companies, because we all do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Which isn't actually all that common.
Yeah.
So I do writing and make dungeons and stat monsters and script.
A lot of that will depend on how big the company is. So at a big company, people are very specialized.
Yes,
and you might be someone who just models something as opposed to doing animations or the texturing to see what it actually looks like.
Just adjusts hair
Right,
slightly.
it's like,
day
and
in, day out.
you might do that one, and it means you'll get really good at that one thing, but at a smaller company, everyone just wears a lot of hats or
Yeah. So, kind of going back a little bit, I got my foot in the door initially by actually doing one of those sort of relatively new video game design programs through college. Got my degree in video game development specifically. Honestly, the gist of that, though, is I was making games, which, going back to their point, you want to make games, and there are a ton of good tools. In general, I think even if one ends up in a company where you are wearing a very specific hat, being a jack of all trades in a lot of ways does help you, because it gives you a better perspective on what other people are doing, and no matter what you're doing in the game industry, you're going to have to be working with other people. So,
for those like myself who couldn't code their way out of a paper bag, I would just say that some general skill sets you're going to want as possibilities would be quality assurance. There is a lot of good quality assurance positions in the video game industry. Additionally, marketing, e-commerce, things like that you might see in traditional business schools very much apply to the business of video games as well. So whether you may not be, working on game design specifically, but video game studios need accountants and financial people and all the rest as well. So that's a possibility for you. For community work in particular, it's a little bit nebulous, but in general, you'll find a lot of the skills for journalism and marketing apply very much to the work of community. You're doing things like trying to see the big picture out of a subset of data and things like that. Put together that data, communicate effectively. So communication style programs are good for that kind of thing.
Run a fan site.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Seriously, run a fan site is...
Yeah.
Or a
Which again kinda goes
podcast.
to the fact of how do you
Or
do
a
it, you do
podcast.
it, right? I mean, you do it and then you work your way into a game industry doing the thing you're already doing.
Yep.
So
I think we've figured out Jerry's master plan for getting into Turbine was 190 some odd episodes of a podcast.
No.
Hey, persistence is important too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate your time. Anything else you guys want to say before we head out the door?
I could say that we are on track to try to bring this to Lamania fairly soon. It's not going to be next week. We're hoping within the next, say, 2 to 3 weeks to have some kind of initial build out on Lamania if all goes well. That's right, But let's say 3 weeks. Just as being the safe side.
The plan is to bring it to Lamania in pieces. In other words,
Yeah.
you won't get everything that's going to be in Update 29 in the first Lamania build.
Yep.
It'll be doled out.
It's a lot of pieces in this update.
Otherwise, we've been keeping a close eye on your Night Revels feedback. This is the final weekend for Night Revels as of the time we're recording this. So now would be a great time to let us know your feedback on the event. We'll be doing what they call a post-mortem and all that sort of thing. Hey, what do we need to do for next time around? So now's a great time to get us that Night Revels feedback. Tolero and our e-commerce people are working ahead toward the holidays, so you can expect a lot of typical holiday-related things going on there. Update 29 is chock full of stuff.
Yes.
So we're working quite hard to get that out by hopefully around the end of the year, that kind of thing. So.
Do you want to plug your Movember page real quick?
Oh, yeah. Mobro.co/Jerry Snook, JerrySnook. Even if you can just donate a few bucks, we are doing some Turbine Point giveaways and some picks from the community loot list. We're just going to do some random giveaways to anyone who donates, plus special giveaways for those who can donate at least, say, $5 or $10, just so we don't get a lot of, say, like 10-cent donations, basically.
I'd also like to point out that
really-
we're like 20% of the way towards getting Jerry to shave the DDO logo into his head.
That's right. You're right.
Yes.
We're excited about that.
Yeah.
Yep, I will totally do it. If we hit $10,000, sure, why not? That would be just not even that big a deal for doing that kind of good. So it's fine.
He wouldn't even look that out of place here in the office.
No, I really
No.
wouldn't. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
And once again, thank you to the devs for taking some time out of their Friday afternoon to answer some questions for us. We're going to get into game news here. The first thing was there was a hot fix on Monday, November 2nd. The big things were fixing an issue that required reincarnated characters to log out and then back in after making a purchase in the DDO store. The many shot was changed again. It now increases double shot by a flat 120, which is the new part. It still does range power by 4 times base attack bonus. The reason for that was that many players were saying that many shot really felt lackluster in lower levels. It didn't really feel like it was worth it. So now it just increases your double shot by 120, which is basically what it would be at level 30 based on the old formula. So just giving that all to you up front. They adjusted some stuff with the Night Revels, mostly in the Delaire's Graveyard, to improve performance. They also made a change to a number of spells that are what we would call area effect spells. They greatly reduced the number of, quote, line of sight checks for the spells. The spells will now check their line of sight from only their center point. Those spells are Everard's Black Tentacles, Blade Barrier, Earthquake, Hellball, Ice Storm, Lightning Motes, Autosphere of Dancing, Sleet Storm, Sunburst, and Wall of Fire. There's a little bit of clarification on this. These spells all affect areas that could potentially be cut off by intervening terrain, walls, doors, and etc. They should do many line of sight checks from multiple points within the area to see if the walls blocked effects completely. For instance, if you cast Firewall, it should not burn enemies on the other side of a closed door it happens to be near. But if you cast it near a wall corner, theoretically it burns enemies around the corner from the center of the spell. The practical upshot is that these spells may now sometimes be blocked from dealing damage and other effects due to intervening terrain where they would not have done before for both players and monsters, but are now only doing a fraction of the line of sight checks that they did before. Those line of sight checks are both computationally expensive and happen quite a lot in those cases. So it's another step that they're taking to try and address some of the lag. Let's see. Level 30 in Reincarnation, there was some explanation of some of the stuff that's going on. There's a lot of historical stuff, as the devs pointed out. With iconics around update 18 and 19, they couldn't reincarnate, especially true reincarnation. They were just kind of left out of the loop. They fixed that with update 20, adding iconic true reincarnation. It was something they did not want to wait on, while also not wanting iconics to reincarnate level 20. Getting every class past life but only playing 15 to 20 was not a design that seemed good. Since they were doing a fairly big overhaul to reincarnation generally, including lesser and heroic, new UI, retiring Kruz, it made sense for them to get epic reincarnation at the same time. That saved us a lot of time and probably greatly reduced bugs, reincarnation being a bug-prone system and usually more serious bugs. In a lot of ways, it could have made sense to wait until level 30 for epic reincarnation. They decided it was okay to let players get a shorter discounted loop for a while until they got to level 30. That was a strategic decision made at the time of update 20. Introducing epic reincarnation sooner rather than later also meant that playing at epic levels could be more rewarding, including for players who liked playing through the reincarnation loop. Some felt that epic was not for them, since that progress was wasted, they might as well just stay in heroic. Level 30 then got pushed out later than the original plan, so it's been longer since update 20 and the reincarnation revamp than was expected. As in not a short period they were planning on, but 2 years. Some of that was because they wanted to make sure they got additional higher level content ahead of the rising cap, instead of having a sparse endgame. Now that there's things like Temple of Elemental Evil, Epic Necropolis, and this year's quest filling in levels 29 and 30, plus some older raids, before raising the cap, they felt that they could go ahead and do that. They didn't feel like they did that as well when they raised the cap to level 28, for instance. With infinite time and resources, they might have done things differently. The 2-year gap between epic reincarnation and level 30 wasn't a goal, but at the same time, DDO was probably better for it. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and it's they've always said from the get-go with epic reincarnation and iconic reincarnation that when level cap goes up to 30, those requirements are going to go up as well. So it's not necessarily a surprise in that respect, but people have kind of been used to it. So they haven't really said much about either legendary content, Mortal Fear, or Reaper mode, as all of those things are for the future. We talked about this a little bit on the devs, when we were asking the devs. We'll know more about that as we get closer to update 29. Reaper difficulty is further out. To summarize what all that stuff was going on, Legendary is going to be challenge rating 31 plus content on normal, as we talked to the devs about. Mortal Fear is being looked at. They haven't decided anything on that. Reaper difficulty unfortunately snuck in a little earlier. It'll be a while before that happens. There was a question about why intelligence and wisdom only for the spooky augments. The response was because wisdom and intelligence builds haven't gotten love recently, and they are considered by some players to have fallen behind. I'm sure you will see more augments in the future that support other builds. Intelligence and wisdom being the primarily DC casting stats. That's where that's kind of the one place where you really, really, really on a build need to go big or go home. You need to get as much as you can to really crank those DCs up. Other builds, you can generally kind of get away with not having the maximum that you can find, but that's kind of some of the reasons behind that. Some bugs. Astral Vibrance is one of the Epic Destiny abilities out of Exalted Angel. It's using spell points. It's having no effect, so we're going to look at that. They've also been having a reoccurring issue where subscription information is not displaying correctly at myaccount.turbine.com. Remains under investigation. If for some reason you go to unsubscribe and run into the issue, it will likely fix itself within a couple hours. However, if necessary, with that or anything else, feel free to contact account support instead. Bonus days, you get plus 20% Guild Renown through Sunday, November 11th. November 8th. Store news, there are plus 7 tomes on sale also through November 8th. So you've been looking for those. They are up. Sales through next week on November 12th. You can get 25% off of Epic Destinies, Tomes of Fate, Keys of Destiny, Fast Travel, and some Epic Adventure Packs. Not all of them, but selected ones. The freebie for the week is a Greater Elixir of Angels Tears. Community news. We had the 165th episode of the Chronicle. There was an article about upping your game. It's actually a YouTube video on about DDO Wiki and how to upgrade your wiki abilities. He's been doing wiki talk videos on YouTube. Amy Lee 4000 celebrated the Night's Revels with the great wallpaper. The guild for the week, the Golden Lion, is a Thelanis-based guild looking for new members to bring their mains and alts into the guild. The guild has a ship and most amenities, along with crafting and shared storage. If you'd like to find out more about them, you can get a hold of them through the comment. The question from the Chronicle this week: what does Perky Poetry do when he's not selling night black coffee and draughts of midnight? I'm going to guess that he takes all of the nice little chocolates that everyone's been collecting and has a nice little vacation and maybe starts peddling those, but I think he's going to eat a lot of them. Fansite news. We got a shout out for our Ask the Devs with Tolero last week about the DDO store. The Damsels of DDO went to the Belly of the Beast in episode 27. Cocktail Hour celebrated Night's Revels with their new show. I was fortunate enough to be a guest on that one. DDO Gamer remakes a superhero. Enrique was looking at a great pumpkin. Tactilicious and Craftilicious looked at the lava caves. Stormreach Campaign wrote about the history of the nation of Zelargo, which is history of the gnomes to a certain extent. It was great. Another really great lore write-up. He's doing a really great job with that. And the Shady Rogues Revel in the Night. They're a lot of fun if you haven't checked them out on YouTube. If you want to find the Shady Rogues, I am sharing one of their playlists on the DDOcast YouTube page as well, so you can find them that way if you're looking for them. The Night Revels will continue through November 8th, this Sunday. There are new quarterly wallpapers, and the weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream was back this week. You can also support Team Turbine for November. Jerry is, as you mentioned before, is raising money with some other folks for Men's Health. It's doing a fantastic job so far. I think they're somewhere around $2,500 raised in just a couple of days. So it's pretty awesome. And I'll say it again: if $10,000 is raised by Team Turbine, Jerry is going to shave the DDO logo into his head, into his hair. So that'll be a lot of fun. It's a stretch goal, admittedly, but kind of had some fun with that. Also, the National Public Radio celebrated 40 years of Dungeons & Dragons in one of their articles. So you can find that through the Chronicle as well. Some videos that we'll be linking to. Lessa had another challenge video. This time it was the Lava Caves, Time is Money. It was a 6-star. It's a little bit less of a tutorial video than some of her other ones. She's not going through it step by step so much, but you can see what she and her party did to make that happen. Again, Damsel DDO had their 27th episode. DDO Players News had their 57th episode this week. The DDO players are also having a poll. Are you enjoying the Night Revels? So you can check that out and let them know what you're thinking. Mickey's Delirium wrote about the Night Revels as well. A little bit of a theme here. And Tactilicious and Craftilicious talked about what are some good classes to run Night Revels with. Kind of look through a couple of those. DDOcast news. With our DDOcast Splat, our group has started Giant Hole. That's our permadeath group. It's mostly using the DDOcast Splat moniker for the permadeath group, but it's also if I'm just kind of generally playing and do actually record stuff, like I did today. Jerry and I kind of joined forces with the Fridays at 4, met up on Kyber and found a bunch of folks, and we ran Fall of Truth and Fire on Thunder Peaks. So you can watch it from his perspective on the DDO stream, from my perspective on DDOcast at YouTube. So you can see both ways and what we're both looking at. We did manage to succeed both of the raids, and we also got to kill Jerry a few times. The survey question for this week: Is it possible to link all quests to a central storyline? All quests, no. You're not going to get all the quests. There's a lot of standalone quests, particularly at lower levels. A lot of the quests tend to be standalone. When you get into kind of more adventure packs, the quests tend to be in storyline form or quest chains. They're generally a story kind of following along. Some of those storylines do match up or kind of go on. Waterworks actually leads into STK, which leads into kind of the Storm Reaver story arc, which hits a lot of different areas. The Giant Hole, Tempest Spine, Reaver's Refuge, to name a few. There's also kind of the whole Devil's story arc. So this would be... it kind of actually starts with the Abbot, believe it or not, but really kind of where you're going to hit the Devils is going to be in the Veil of Twilight. But that whole thing, if you read the text, is started by the Abbot's attempt to Ascension. So there's a little bit of a tie-in there, although they're not, it's kind of the only part of it that is. But then you can kind of link the Devils of Sharvaroth in Veil of Twilight, Amrath, the Chronoscope, and then a lot of the newer content. So there are definitely larger storylines that you can kind of really get a long-term... they kind of carry out over multiple packs and updates. But there's still a lot of quests that are just standalone quests that are just off by themselves. They don't really have any connection to anything unless you create one. The Stormreach campaign actually does a pretty good job of that, kind of tying stuff together and kind of making it more of a campaign. But the game itself, no, you can't link everything, but you can link a lot of stuff to itself to kind of have a lot of those more storylines. Especially when you actually get into Forgotten Realms, there's a lot of tie-ins, and you see characters crop up a lot more often, same characters, that kind of stuff. So a hint would be to look at sagas. They tend to have contained storylines, although there's a lot of overlapping in what's going on, but they're generally kind of looking at a particular thread in terms of story. So I'm going to wrap up the show here. Thanks again to the devs for another Ask the Devs. Really appreciate it when they take some time to do that. It's a great opportunity for us to kind of hear some of what's coming up the pipeline and some of their thought behind it. And I really appreciate their time. Thanks for listening to the show, and thanks to other contributors of DDOCast. It's a great group of folks, getting some new folks involved with that. We've got a lot of people that have been part of the show in the past and have kind of phased out as they've gotten busy or moved on. But it's always great to have people in that group of folks contributing to DDOcast, making it a better show than me talking by myself, like today again. We'll have more people back next week live, more interaction with that. Also, thanks to Turbine and Wizards of the Coast for making DDO happen, and thanks to Cyber Ears for hosting the podcast. You can hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, our calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be a part of the show, if you have a comment on this episode, or question you'd like to ask us, or a topic you'd like us to debate or talk about, if you just want to say hi, you can leave a comment anywhere you can leave a comment with this shows, or you can email us, ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media, at DDOcast on Twitter, and also you can follow us on all those stuff for the latest cast updates. Twitter's the best one. I generally only do DDOcast Planet stuff on Twitter. Closing tip for the week comes from Nim Toast Hater. They may be expensive, but when you're starting fresh, buy a full stack of health potions. They can be the best loot you own at low to mid levels. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chests level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to enjoy the last weekend of Night Revels.